Welcome to episode 9 of BRANDCORE, where each week we come up with a different theme to talk about for brands and business, especially in the food and beverage area. And so far we've had a couple of really interesting guests on all kinds of areas of the food and beverage industry. We've had a couple of entrepreneurs, we've had a labeling expert. Today we're going to be joined by Sarah Nichols from Bacardi. That's my mystery hand accessory at work there. You too can have one of these. So we'll be joined by Sarah shortly. And Sarah's the marketing director of Bacardi Australia, and she is, I guess, a team builder and a strategic thinker. So she'll introduce herself shortly, but she'll talk about what's involved in running such a massive special business like Bacardi, which is the world's largest independent spirits brand. How cool is that? So just a quick chat about our connection with spirits. So here at the offices, we have in the past worked with a number of spirits brands, larger ones and smaller ones. And it is a fascinating sector, I guess, because of the changes in the market. So first of all, I guess the market's gone really premium, and prices that people weren't prepared to pay 20 years ago are now kind of standard. Legislation has also led to a number of changes in Australia. So, 20 years ago, you couldn't have a micro distillery, and now you can. And with that has come all these other innovations. So you've got organic ingredients, you've got native Australian ingredients, and you've got beautiful, really distinct craft packaging, really distinctive bottle shapes and also labels. So there's a lot happening in the market, and we're going to get Sarah to join us now. Here she is. The camera's gone a lot more smoothly than it has for me in the past. Oh, I'm just going to
don't speak too
get
soon.
into the camera. How are you today, Sarah?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. How's lockdown going?
I'm just drinking more Bombay, which is not a bad thing for our sales. So. Actually, funnily enough, I'm doing dry July.
Well sorted.
It's going. I feel for everyone out there, more sort of virtual meetings. But look, we're all in the same boat. So apart from those of us in states that aren't in lockdown, but for us in Sydney,
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a few more months of uncertainty ahead, I'd imagine. But
I guess so.
Look, I've introduced you very briefly. Hope I got it right, but I'd love you to sort of start by telling us a little bit about what your job entails. It's a massive role, and you guide, set the direction for a lot of people on your team. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I'm the marketing director of Bacardi Martini here in Australia. Bacardi Martini, just to give everyone a bit of background, because it's not just Bacardi the brand. So Bacardi Martini is the biggest still family-owned spirits business in the world, with a turnover around about $4 billion US. And we have a number of brands within the portfolio. So Bacardi, obviously the name on the door, but also names that I hope everyone's familiar with: Bombay Sapphire Gin, Grey Goose Vodka, Patron Tequila, to name a few. And my role as marketing director really here is to execute the global brand strategies of our core four, as we call it, which are the four big brands that I've just named previously. And really, we set the global strategy at a global level, and it's my job to run the team down here in executing that strategy across all facets of marketing. So everything from innovation to PR, events, brand strategy, shopper strategy, category, etc.
Wow, very, very, very big. So what does a day in the life of a marketing director like yourself look like?
If I could show you my diary, lots of meetings. I think, once you get to a director level, your role really is about guiding and direction. And that's what I find myself doing. So it's not necessarily doing all the hard yards in prepping, PowerPoint slides and Excel spreadsheets. It's more around giving direction, coaching the team, liaising with agencies, working with our global sort of peers in terms of ensuring that we're all across and communicating what the brands want from a global level right throughout the organization. And then in addition to that, and I've found, in the last, I would say, probably 7 to 8 years, my role has become, and I would say most marketing directors' roles in this industry have become a lot more customer facing. So do quite a lot of top to top meetings with, you know, the likes of Endeavour Drinks Group, which is Woolworths, so Dan Murphy's, BWS, a lot of our independent customers. And really that role is about showcasing and presenting our strategy for brands, and then how that integrates with customers' strategies. So that's become a lot more entwined than probably it did many years ago.
And what kind of factors have led to that increased sort of customer focus?
I think probably that we now have to have a much more category and shopper focus than we have done in the past. So if I wind back 20 years ago, it was, you know, fun in marketing, used to make lots of ads and TVCs, and, you know, now it's all sort of gone digital, which is fantastic because you have that one-to-one communication. But when it comes to customers, what they're really after is not growing your brand, but growing the category. So we play a role in understanding the category and bringing to them solutions that will help, you know, drive traffic through their doors. Versus years ago, it was very much, here's a brand ad, this will drive people in through your stores. So that paradigm has definitely changed. One, I think, for the better.
Yeah, got you. So instead of sort of talking about this brand or that, it's about, let's do this for the gin sector, or let's do this for rum, and to, got you. Yeah. And I'd imagine that's particularly important now since COVID, because you've mentioned, you know, a couple of interesting marketing activities that you work on. But, you know, to me, if I think of Bacardi just over the generations, event sponsorship has been such a big thing for you. And of course, that's had to change completely on its head. So can you tell us a bit, firstly, you know, we'll talk about a couple of your strategies and initiatives, but I'd love to hear about the events you've been doing.
Yeah, well, all of them have been online, including actually making making spots and digital spots online last year, actually, that happened in New York for Bacardi. But yeah, I mean, events and experiential was a big focus, and has always been a big focus for Bacardi, because part of that is, I guess, showcasing the brand in its natural environment and having consumers interact with it. And really, it's not just about the product, but it's about everything that hangs off it. And so events for us were really key, whether that be trade events or consumer style events. As you said, completely turned on its head. We had to get really creative last year with kind of dialing up what we did online. And that, I think, you know, with the unfortunate shutdown of the hospitality industry, one of the other things that Bacardi has always been very well known for is supporting the on-premise, so restaurants and bars. And so we took a lot of inspiration from our customers in that space and utilized them and worked with them to create content that we could then push out through social channels. And that became really engaging, as opposed to just, you know, your normal influencer stuff. So it actually resonated with consumers really well. And we had all sorts of events. We had brand ambassadors doing things like Whiskey Without the Risky, which was an online training, and brand ambassadorial sort of project that involved consumers and trade when everyone was locked down. We sent them out little sort of whiskey samplers, and our brand ambassadors took them through a whiskey tasting online. That happened every week. So it was everything from that to sort of bigger style events, which were more globally led. I have to say, though, that the locally ones definitely resonated with our consumers here.
I can imagine. Yeah, we'll get onto that in a sec, because I'd be interested to know what your plans are for local content. But I love the Bar at Home initiative that you did, so with Jimmy Brings, because that's just such a great sort of a brand partner, the fact that they're just so well resourced to deliver all these kits at home. So with the events involving, you know, shifting to online and then potentially involving influencers, and then we've got a partner like Jimmy Brings, what are some other, I guess, emerging opportunities or exciting things you're working on?
Look, I think there was, you know, if I take Bombay Sapphire, whose marketing platform is around creativity, we saw a real influx of kind of helping people to have fun at home. So that's what we did out in the real world. So how could we bring that to life? And that was, we did a whole series of sort of painting and teaching people how to paint online, and then mixing it up with Bombay. So that was a really nice bit of activity that we did last year. And I think that interaction between consumers and what you're doing online was fundamental to sort of the success of all of those campaigns. When, if I'm honest with you, the campaigns and the events that we did, which was just pushing out content, weren't nearly as, I don't think the consumer embraced it as much as they did when there was that one-to-one interaction.
Being able to participate was really big, So that's really interesting, isn't it? Because when you're talking about spirits, there's the connoisseurship angle, but then there's the lifestyle angle. And of course, lifestyle is what we're all craving right now after 18 months of very, very unusual conditions. So that's exciting. And
sorry.
Oh, no, go on. I was going to say, with the influencers, what kind of sort of people have you been working with? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, all of the influencers we do, you know, we work very closely with our media and PR agency. We don't have regular sort of influencers that are on retainers or anything. They're very much picked dependent on the brand, what's the objective that we're trying to reach, who are we trying to reach. So I think you know, some of the issues with influencers is that consumers know that influencers are there, they've been paid by brands to influence, and so I think that the key to that is making sure that you use a range of, or we use a range of influencers that may not have massive followings, but they're very akin to what the brand, you know, they're akin to kind of the brand values that we hold. And so it resonates a lot better with consumers because it's really authentic.
Yeah. So I guess I'm sort of thinking one of the biggest success stories was the cranberry juice influencer from America, which I think was then found out that he was paid to do it. But it really flew under the radar for a long time, and it looks really authentic. So is that the kind of thing that you're looking for, those really natural, the micro influencers?
Absolutely. And I think they hold it. Yeah, they have a lot of power. You know, I saw one last night from Holland, which was a guy literally sort of stripped off drinking. We have a product over there called Bacardi Limon, to this song, and it was, you know, all these girls around him, and he's like drinking Bacardi Limon and saying, "I love you, Bacardi Limon." And actually, you know, that went viral over there. It had a lot more following than what we could have paid for. You know, if I jump onto TikTok, there's so much content on there through influencers that we have nothing to do with, because we're alcohol. We can't really use TikTok as a platform, so nothing on there. It's all organic. But some of the stuff on there is great. Some of it makes me shudder. But most of the content is real, you know, and that's what consumers want.
Yeah. And to what extent do big names get involved? So last year, Gordon Ramsay was on a National Geographic program, and they went to Tasmania and visited a lot of the whiskey distilleries there. And that actually made massive ripples for Tasmanian whiskey. So have any sort of, I guess, big names been involved, or is that still something that you're sort of moving away from?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, depending on the brand, I mean, we have a brand in the US called Douce Cognac, which, you know, is part owned by Jay-Z and ourselves. So obviously that's a big influence. He's a big influencer, has a massive following. Again, I think it depends on the brand. So, you know, the bigger, obviously, the brand is, the bigger personalities and stars you can get behind it. And I still think there's absolute space for that, but I think it depends on what you're doing. So if you want, you know, endorsement of product, fantastic. If you want them to really engage in the brand and become brand ambassadors, that's a little bit more tricky. And I think consumers sort of see through it. That's when consumers are like, okay, well, they're paid to do this. Yeah, we've found that micro influencers are definitely where it's at, I think. And moving forward, using a lot of local influencers rather than international ones.
Yeah, cool. And how do you bridge the kind of the link, or create a bridge, I guess, between the inspiring stuff people are seeing online or even participating in, and then kind of actually going into the stores to buy it. So is are mailing lists still a thing, or do most of those prompts happen on social media? What are the things that are working for you?
Look, social plays a huge part in that, and we've actually found it getting, you know, even more and more stronger each year. We are really sort of working on our first party data collection to start having those conversations on a one-to-one basis with consumers, because for us, like other, you know, liquor sort of fits within that FMCG world, it's really challenging to have that one-on-one conversation, because we use retailers as a vehicle to get to consumers. That is changing with the likes of e-commerce coming online. So Jimmy Brings is a great example. But you know, it is, though, it's definitely the conversations before they're in store. And you know, you will see that liquor stores in particular over the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years they've really been rolling out this clean store policy. So years ago, you used to go in and there'd be wobblers on the shelf and, you know, decals everywhere and AO posters, and now it's all about clean store, which has also put up sort of challenges for us. You know, how do you stand out in store? So the pre-store piece is absolutely fundamental for us, getting that right, so that, you know, when they're in store, it's a matter of just reminding them, and then, you know, we take it from there. So that has changed quite dramatically in the last 5 years.
There are some cool limited edition in-store displays happening, aren't there? So I think it was 19 Crimes, the wine brand. Yeah. They had like these extensive displays that told the story of the convicts sort of sent out to Australia for these, you know, really innocuous crimes, which was considered quite successful. But you're right, it's not the norm, is it, to have a lot of stuff going on in the retail setting?
Look, and you try to work with retailers to get your share of space, and it comes down to sort of, you know, how deep is your wallet, what's the engagement factor. So they're always looking for, you know, and I think 19 Crimes did a great job in bringing that to life, especially for a wine brand, which is really difficult to cut through. Spirit brands, I think, are a lot easier to market, having been on both sides. But, you know, retailers are also looking for people to bring them something new. So how can they engage? And they want, you know, shoppers to stay in store longer. But it's quite, I mean, liquor as I think as a category is very difficult to shop, I'll be honest. I think, you know, you walk into a BWS and it says Chardonnay. It's like, well, I don't know what sort of Chardonnay that is. And so it's all delivered by price. And I think the same with spirits and beers. So we do have a real job to do, but there's limited space. So having that conversation with them before store is really vitally important.
Yeah, but let's talk a little bit more about that retail setting, both e-commerce and in-store. So, you know, with all these changes the market's seen in the last 20 years, there have also been some incredible changes in branding and packaging. And so we've really seen the rise of the craft sector, which to us has then also kind of coloured off the way some of the big brands market themselves. So you've got more kind of unusual bottle shapes and embossing and unusual typefaces. And, you know, I saw this, I was sort of saying before the show started, you know, the definition of some great packaging is when you don't want to throw it away, you kind of keep it for a little bit. So what are some things that Bacardi's doing there visually to make its different brands really both deliver something new, because you're saying, you know, consumers want to see something new, but yeah, also just to generally compete?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good point. I mean, you know, gin's a perfect example, where I remember working on Bombay 20 years ago in the UK, and it was the blue bottle and everyone loved the blue bottle. It was either the blue bottle or the green bottle with Tanqueray. Now there's a multitude of gins. And it's not something, we don't change our packaging I guess we're not going to change it because craft has come along. Our job has changed. So what do we now need to do to engage the consumer? We're not going to change the packaging of Bombay because 4 pillars are in that packaging or whatever. That's fundamental to our brand, the colour of the bottle, the look and the feel of it. Our job then becomes, how do we still engage consumers with the offering when you're right, there's a whole lot of new products out there which, you know, can be just have that pull factor on shelf. Bacardi, Grey Goose, different things altogether. So Bacardi continually just upgrades packaging year on year. It's a little bit like Coke. You wouldn't actually notice it, but over an evolution of time, we just tweak it occasionally. And then there's brands like Patron and Grey Goose who have, you know, again, Patron as a tequila, super premium tequila, you know, has an amazing shaped bottle, talks to everything within craft. So a cork that, you know, is actually a proper cork, tissue paper that reflects the flavor in the boxes. So all of those things we continually look at. And each brand is very different, and each category is very different. But I think it's a case of us not just following trends, it's sticking to, you know, the fundamentals of what the brand is all about. But as I said before, your job changes, and packaging can be used very effectively to do that, or, you know, or it may be in the comms strategy that you're delivering that has to work a bit harder.
Yeah. And what about the storytelling for the brand? So if you look at sort of traditional labels, they'll either be, you know, tasting notes, so whether it's spirits or wine or anything else, which, you know, wine, of course, you've also got a lot of experience in. And sometimes you have serving suggestions. But increasingly, you're sort of seeing brands talk about the story. And I was just sort of reading this lovely bit of copy on the side of the Bacardi bottle about this tree, this coconut tree that survived. Yeah, that survived wars, earthquakes, and a distillery fire. So what kind of things are you doing, you know, in that vein to really bring across the richness of heritage and the skill, you know, this is a big name brand, not just because someone woke up one day and decided to build a mega factory. It's a big name brand because it's got 150 years of heritage and a whole lot of craft and expertise in there. So what kind of things are you doing to bring that to life?
Yeah, so we have, for Bacardi in particular, there's sort of two components of it. One, as you mentioned, is around, you know, utilising the liquid to, you know, really get people into the rum category and get them making cocktails and all of that side of things. And then, as you say, the heritage behind it. And the heritage is so important, I think, in the storytelling piece. Bacardi, I think we've always told the stories, but I think it's becoming more and more relevant because people want that authenticity. You know, they want to know that the brand, where the brand has come from, the provenance of the brand, and what and the people behind the brand. So, you know, for Patron, for instance, we have a campaign called 60 Hands, because there's 60 hands that touch every single bottle of Patron, right from the fields of agave right through to packaging and production. Explaining that story, you know, digital has been absolutely transformational from that perspective. It's very difficult, even with rich media and the old days of running a TVC that's 30 seconds to tell the whole story. So we're really using those digital channels to engage consumers and doing it from sort of bite-sized chunks right through to where people really want to dive into and, you know, take the time. So whiskey, you know, for us, we have a brand called Aberfeldy, and Craigellachie is another single malt that we have, and both of those brands have great stories. But you're talking to a whiskey consumer that doesn't mind spending half an hour listening to a brand ambassador or distiller talk, versus if you look at the consumer set behind Bacardi and who's drinking it, they want kind of 10-second, 20-second snippets. And so piecing together those little stories is really, really relevant, and interesting to really sort of deliver the right brand story to the right consumer at the right time, I think.
Yeah, got you. Cool. So just got one or two questions left, and then I'll let you get back to your day. But you touched on Australian content and how you know, local consumers, you know, really respond well to local influences. What are some other sort of keys, I guess, to reaching the Australian consumer?
Definitely Australian content is one. So you've mentioned that. I think the other thing is contextualizing things. So it's actually one of our challenges where most of the world is in the Northern Hemisphere. So most of the creative that we get given is a classic example would be Grey Goose, Christmas time last year, where there was some beautiful creative assets that were delivered, but they were all shot in London and New York with, you know, sort of snow falling and inside. And so that becomes a real challenge. But what we have found is that we just need to get ahead of that. So it's in the briefing back to global to sort of say, okay, when you shoot Christmas, remember your friends down in Australia to remember that you're going to have to take those models outside and put them in bikinis and shoot in the freezing cold. But we need sort of that content. So contextually relevant is key, making sure that you also talk into occasions. So occasions have become more and more important to consumers. So what's happening? Have we got a solution? How can the brand have a solution for you? And so that might be Australia Day is a classic example where it becomes very relevant. And doing a lot of content, but also user generated content. And what we're finding now too is using content that's derived from events. So in the past, you know, and that also reduces your cost of entry making content, because content can be cheap and it can be very expensive to produce. So getting UGC up and running has been really effective.
Got you. So 3 keys there to making it more local friendly. So first of all, the seasonal factor. Because right now if you go online, you'll see a lot of midsummer kind of things. Then like you say, the calendar events, Australia Day or Valentine's or things like that. And then, of course, the events that ideally, once life goes back to normal, you'll be sponsoring again. So whether it's Vivid, so beautiful midwinter cocktails for Vivid, or something for some other like iconic festival for that city. So cool. Well, let's hope that does work out for you, because that would be really exciting to see.
I don't think Vivid's happening though, unfortunately.
They're probably, because I was all excited that it was going to be in August. They kind of moved it from May to August, but I haven't checked it. They've cancelled it, huh?
I'm not sure, but I think that could, put a bit of a spanner in the works, because we had lots of Vivid.
Not looking too good, is it? Gosh, what a shame. If they can move it to someplace before daylight savings goes back, we're okay.
There you go.
Fingers crossed. I love Vivid. I guess the final thing I wanted to ask is, so many people we've been talking to on this show have sort of talked about the rise of the non-alcohol spirits. And I was wondering, what kind of developments you have in the works there, and also how you see it kind of dovetailing with the spirits sector, so because I would imagine that it complements the spirits, so once you've had what you feel is what you need to be, you're not going to go over that limit. You might switch to non-alcoholic, but you're still enjoying this culture. So how do you see that sector working with Bacardi?
Look, we've been looking at for the last couple of years. We've launched several non-alc products, namely in Europe and the US, that are flying. Martini in particular has 2 versions of non-alcoholic variants, which are great actually, because they're a lot more cost effective than some of the other ones, because it's actually, in terms of production, it's actually a very expensive production method, because if you do it properly, you produce the spirit and then you have to de-alcoholize. De-alcoholize the spirit. So it's another step. We have taken the approach, like most, people are drinking, I think you mentioned this right at the beginning, people are drinking less, but they're drinking more premium. And so that's great in terms of our portfolio, because we have a premium portfolio. But what we also need to do is make sure that we're at the front runner of kind of supporting this health and wellbeing movement. And it goes all through, not just health and wellbeing, but sustainability, the whole thing. So they do complement each other. I mean, we have, brands such as Saint Germain Elderflower Cordial, which is an alcoholic, low alcohol version of that. So we did recently a campaign with women's and men's health around cocktails that aren't overly alcoholic, that are low in calories. So I think it does complement the portfolio well. And I think again, it's having the consumer at heart. So if that's what the consumer wants and that's what's being driven, then it's our job to really give them solutions that taste as good as alcohol does. And I think probably the beer category has done that best. The beer non-alc products almost taste like real beer. Wine, it's very difficult to get that taste profile right. And spirits, I think we're on the move. But you definitely see the interaction, as you say, whether it's spritz, so it can be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be actually a low alcohol format. It can be try this type of, you know, like as I said, Saint Germain and soda will give you the flavor, but you know, not necessarily the massive alcohol boost. So it's coming up with drink strategies as well as products that can deliver to that.
Wow, that is amazing. And we noticed that you've got a massive, like a wellbeing program as well, with hotlines for your suppliers, for anyone in the Bacardi family, I guess, to reach out and find a better way forward for their mental health. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, that's an internal thing that we had, but we actually then, with the start of COVID, just sort of opened it up. And it's been really well received, especially by the on-premise, that we've really partnered with and kind of understand that alcohol, you got to be very careful with it. It should be the lubricator of life, but it can also, unfortunately, turn into something that, you know, we don't want to be associated with. So we need to be responsible stewards of the brands and responsible stewards of our company. And so having that balance is where we need to be. And it has fundamentally changed since I've been in the booze industry. So 20 years ago, you wouldn't have seen it anywhere, whereas now most big corporate companies are absolutely embracing it, and so they should. So it's a good move in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, very encouraging to hear. Yeah, cool. All right, so my last question, because a lot of the people that do tune in are startups, so people either sort of have already created their brands or are thinking of starting one. So what would be sort of your top marketing tip for a distillery or a spirits company that's just starting out?
Look, I think the first one is, as I said before, to put the consumer at the heart. So whilst you might love the liquid and you might love the packaging, make sure that your consumers also think the same, because within alcohol, there's a lot of passion projects out there, and we see it all the time. We're often presented with small companies that are looking for either investment or for M&As. And you know, sometimes the product's great, and sometimes it just doesn't hit the mark. So I think that's the first thing: have the consumer at heart. Make sure that you do testing with them, and it doesn't need to be massive research groups. Test it with the right demographics. So if you're going after an 18 to 24-year-old demo, then test it with an 18 to 24-year-old, not a 50-year-old guy in a suit that, you know, is your finance director. And that's really important to make sure that you hone in on that. Secondarily, you know, with a lot of startups that I've seen, they kind of forget about the marketing to a lot of people is just it's all fluff and nonsense. And I think that's also really key. Marketing is key to your brand success. So really honing in on where your consumer lives, drawing up personas, making sure that you live in the day of their lives so that you're getting the right touch points in terms of communication is fundamental. And then something, you know, that there is absolutely something around, you know, drawing up a really clear brand identity, understanding your positioning, and really the positioning for me, I can't stress enough as a marketer. I think, you know, a lot of positioning, we don't spend enough time on it, or I don't see a lot of people spend enough time on it. And what happens is you just become very vanilla. You have no point of difference. And then, you know, you really struggle. So the first year could be great. Your sales could be through the roof. And then because of your lack of clarity around your positioning, you lose that. So I would say spend tons of time on positioning and wordsmith it until you're really happy with it. Get other people to look at it, and at the basis of that is the purpose of the brand and why does the brand exist. And I know it sounds a bit existential, but I think, you know, we need to go back to the basics on marketing. People kind of, it's not about what the label looks like, forget all that, just get your positioning right and everything else will fall into place.
So the actual sort of the point of difference, the concrete point of difference, but also the psychographics, that why, absolutely. I guess, of the that is awesome advice.
Who are you targeting? What is the benefit? And at the end of the day, the big one for me too is around what problem are you solving for your consumer?
What problem are you solving? Nice one. I'm going to leave. I think that's a great place to leave it. Thanks so much for joining us today, Sarah.
No problem. It's been nice chatting.
Likewise. And we'll send you a video later, and hope everyone else can watch the video. If you haven't watched it, Shed85, Kaylee, Dan Parrott, Lenza Brosi, quite a few others. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll be back again next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Bye.